Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with another review. And now I'm actually reviewing something that was on a planned marathon that I had, not a random one. So one of my more recent reviews was Hammer's first real horror film, Curse of Frankenstein. And I'm continuing with that with the first sequel in that series, The Revenge of Frankenstein, which came out the following year in 1958. Stars Peter Cushing, of course, as Dr. Frankenstein, Francis Matthews, Michael Gwynn, and Eunice Gayson. Directed, of course, by Terrence Fisher. And it's the first sequel in their Frankenstein series. And with this film, I think it really helped establish that the Hammer Frankenstein series focuses on Dr. Frankenstein rather than the monster, which is what Universal did. Because this one takes place right when Curse of Frankenstein ends. Curse of Frankenstein ended with Frankenstein being led to the guillotine. Here it picks up with him arriving at the guillotine. There is some kind of errors because when Curse ended, it was really kind of just law enforcement and locals that heard about his diabolical experiments and crimes. But here it opens up with opening, not really a crawl, but a caption saying that when he was sentenced to death, the whole continent breathed a sigh of relief. So now he's like a worldwide known criminal. But the scene ends with the blade of the guillotine coming down, and we then cut to sometime later, because that's the first shot of the movie, and we're like, well, what the hell? How the hell did he get out of that? Well, we see two drunken guys in a tavern. They're talking about doing something, and they go to a cemetery. They start digging up a grave, and it happens to be Baron Frankenstein's. But when they open it, there's a priest's body in it, not Frankenstein. That's when Peter Cushing appears as Frankenstein, scares the grave robber to death. Like, literally, he has a heart attack from fear. So I guess we're supposed to believe that because the other guy that was with him is a hunchback named Carl. And I guess we're supposed to believe that Carl helped him escape the guillotine and put the priest in his place. Carl agreed to help him because Frankenstein told him he can correct his hunchback by putting his brain in a perfect body. Similar to the stuff we've seen in past Universal Frankenstein films, like, we'll put you in a perfect body. So now it's 3 years later, and we're in the city of, I think it says Carlsbruck, wherever that is. I didn't want to go back that far. Give me a moment. This is... Actually, you know what? History. I ended up hitting the wrong thing, so... Alright, so yeah, we're in Carlsbruck, wherever that is. It's 3 years later, and he's going by Dr. Stein. Yeah, he looks the same, he's going by Stein. No one should figure that out. He's working as a physician for... he does it for the rich, but he also works in a pauper's hospital tending to all the poor locals. But there's a young doctor named Hans who knows who he is. He blackmails Frankenstein into like, let me help you, or else I'll tell everyone who you are, because he looks up to him, he admires him. And Hans is played by Francis Matthews. Carl's played by Oscar Kwiatek. And then Michael Gwynn is the new Carl, because he does get a new body. And so Hans is his new assistant, and they first, we don't really see it, but it's hinted to that he has a chimp that he put a brain transplant from an orangutan into the chimp, which he seemed fine, but then it shows that it has, you know, a hunger for meat, raw meat. So Hans seems to think Carl's going to turn into a monster, but of course, Victor does not care. And Peter Cushing this time around, he's a lot more cool and collective. Like, as the film builds up and things get heated and start closing in on him, he seems pretty cool. At one point, Carl, he wakes up after having his transplant into his new body, and Hans tells him that he's going to be a big sensation in this new a discovery of science. And he gets worried about being famous, so he leaves the hospital, goes to the lab, burns his old body, and then this janitor comes in, he's all drunk, he beats the hell out of him. And there's some speculation that like, some people think that the janitor beating him up gave him brain damage, and that's why he turned kind of into an animal. But later on, finding out that the chimp came out the way it did, like, he gets this animalistic look on his face and strangles the janitor. And I do own the film. It's just part of Hammer Films has a few of these Blu-ray double features. This one comes with Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, which is the second of that series. So I can't watch that one yet because I don't have the Mummy yet. Yeah, that's Carl when he's in like his animal state. But eventually, there's like this social elite party that Carl finds his way to. And he kills a random woman. So people are already on the lookout for him. And he goes up to Frankenstein and says, "Help me, Frankenstein." He addresses him by name in front of everyone. So then there's like this council where they're like, well, the reports here from London that describe him is exactly how he looks. Stein's a little close to Frankenstein. Hans wants Victor to leave, but Peter Cushing does a great job at just playing just this cool, like, well, I'm not worried. And being very confident and manipulative. Even when he has to present himself to the council, he's like, there's Frankensteins all over Europe. Like, of course, I am a Frankenstein, but I can't come here and practice with that name, so I changed it. And also, the focus of this film isn't so much reanimating the dead or a creation of man from put together parts. It's more about bringing back certain body parts. Like, he wants to make sure the brain isn't crude and thrown together. And his bodies look a lot better. They're not, it doesn't look as Frankenstein monster-y. But then, of course, the council goes to London. They dig up the grave. They see that there's a priest in it, so Dr. Stein is Frankenstein. Victor goes to the pauper's hospital. All the poor people know who he is. They beat the hell out of him. And that's when he tells Hans, you got to do what you got to do. And I guess I forgot to say spoilers because I've just been going on with it. But, I mean, it's a pretty good sequel. I mean, is it as good as Bride of Frankenstein? No. But they're very different movies because it's a very different series. Bride of Frankenstein continued Mary Shelley's story, put more of her story that they did get in the first film. This really has nothing of Mary Shelley in it. It is purely a sequel to Hammer's film. They told the Mary Shelley story, or at least their version of it, and from this point on, it's their series. Frankenstein also created a perfect body. So, in the event that he's found out, Hans can take his brain out, put it in that, present his dead body, so that, you know, he's dead. There's no more Frankenstein. But he can continue living on. But he made the perfect body with his likeness. He still looks like Peter Cushing, except he has a mustache. And he goes back to London. It ends with him back in London, looking the same, and his new name is Dr. Frank. So, whether it be lack of creativity, whether it be lack of faith in the audience on the writer's part, or just that's what they went with, he went from Frankenstein to the aliases Stein and Frank. But that's how Revenge of Frankenstein ended. And I will say it's not like the bloody horror film that the first one was. And even then, the first one was more just when Christopher Lee got shot in the eye. But the whole part about taking out brains and putting them in jars of water, or even when he shows that he's working with individual body parts, like he has a brain with eyeballs hooked up to it, that was pretty gruesome for 1958. And 1958 was also the first year that was the year of Hammer's first Dracula film, Horror of Dracula, which that was Christopher Lee's series. He's the Count, and Peter Cushing plays Van Helsing. Revenge is kind of slow up until you get to the point where Carl breaks into the lab, burns his body. That's where it really picks up. Once the heat gets turned on for Frankenstein, people start figuring out who he is. That's where the film really picks up. It starts getting really interesting and really intense. But nonetheless, I did enjoy it. I'm a sucker for anything Frankenstein, other than some of the recent films like Frankenstein's Army and all those really independent nothing films. But, you know, Peter Cushing, he did a great job in this movie. He's just so ruthlessly obsessed and cool and collective, and Cushing just nails it. So, another solid entry in the Hammer horror catalog. So, my next review will be the third and last one that I have, and then I'll move on to the Dracula films. So that will be Evil of Frankenstein. But anyway, thank you for watching.